If you wait until everything is visible, until every question has an answer, until every step is clear, you'll never begin. The truth is, the most powerful moments in life, the turning points, the breakthroughs, the miracles, all start not in certainty, but in faith, and not just any faith, the kind of faith that begins where sight ends, Most people are trained to believe only in what they can see. They trust numbers, evidence, proof, and while logic has its place, it was never meant to be the architect of your destiny. Faith, not logic, builds the bridge between where you are and where you're meant to go. It reaches beyond what is and lays hold of what could be. And that reach, that stretch beyond the visible, is where a new future begins. You cannot create a new future while being bound by your current limitations. You must rise above what your eyes can see, because what you see is often temporary, but what you believe is what shapes reality. If you only ever respond to what's visible, your bank account, your circumstances, your past, you'll be trapped in a cycle of reaction. But if you live by faith, you begin to initiate a new cycle. You begin to lead your life instead of just surviving it. Faith is the foundation of all forward motion. It's the internal decision to walk even when you don't yet know the destination. And there is power in that decision. When you step forward in faith, you open the door for unseen possibilities to take shape. Just as a seed contains the blueprint for a tree, your act of faith contains the potential for a future far greater than your present. Let's make something clear. Faith is not the denial of reality. It is the refusal to let only reality decide your direction. Faith acknowledges the facts, but it refuses to bow to them. It doesn't pretend the mountain isn't high. It simply believes that with God, the mountain can be moved, climbed, or conquered. And that belief changes everything. The reason faith is so powerful is because it shifts your focus. It takes your eyes off the limitation and turns your gaze toward the possibility. It's a change in mental posture, in emotional energy, and ultimately in your identity. When you begin to say, "I don't see it yet, but I believe something good is coming," you rewire the expectations of your mind. And when your expectations change, so do your actions. You carry yourself differently. You show up with purpose. You work with confidence. You speak with hope. And the world begins to respond to that energy. Psychologically, this matters more than most people realize. The human brain is wired to look for confirmation. If you believe the future will be difficult, your brain will search for evidence to support that. But if you believe the future can be different, if you believe in growth, healing, and grace, your brain will begin to spot opportunities that were invisible to you before. This isn't magic, it's mindset, and mindset informed by faith is one of the greatest tools you possess. That's why you cannot afford to wait until the conditions are perfect to act, because faith is not born in comfort. It is revealed in motion. When Abraham left his home, he didn't know where he was going. When David faced Goliath, he had no military experience. When the disciples followed Jesus, they didn't have a blueprint. What they had was trust, and that trust That raw, courageous, sometimes trembling trust was the seed that grew into a new world. We must stop assuming that clarity is the prerequisite for movement. Most of the clarity you're looking for will only come after you move. Vision grows as you walk, not before. It's the person who takes the step in darkness who gets to witness the light ahead. Faith is the great activator. It activates creativity, resilience, vision, and strength. You may not feel ready. That's okay. Faith isn't about feelings, it's about choice. The choice to believe in a future you can't yet see. The choice to invest in a process that hasn't yet proven itself. The choice to speak words of life when silence feels safer. These choices create the future not in theory, but in real, tangible ways. There are people right now who are building their lives on what they've seen, what others have done, what history says, what fear confirms. But if you want a new future, you must dare to build on what you believe. You must step out of the cycle of sight-based thinking and begin living in the space where faith does its greatest work in the unseen . So I ask you, what would you do today if you weren't limited by what you see? What door would you knock on? What dream would you revisit? What habit would you start? What fear would you confront? What plan would you finally pursue if you believed the invisible was just as real as the visible? Because that is where faith lives, and that is where the future begins. When sight ends, faith begins. And when faith begins, the impossible starts to become reality. There's something extraordinary that happens when you begin to understand that your story isn't finished, that the page you're on, however torn, however marked by pain, regret, or disappointment, is not the final chapter. You see, faith doesn't just help you survive your past. It empowers you to write it. Not by changing what happened, but by changing the meaning you assign to it. That's what gives faith its power. It reinterprets the past in a way that creates a new future. So many people live trapped in the prison of what has already occurred. They wear the labels of their mistakes. They carry the weight of who they used to be. And somewhere along the way, they begin to believe a quiet lie that because their past was broken, their future must be limited. But that's not how faith operates. Faith looks at the same facts but tells a different story. It says, yes, I've been through difficulty, but I'm still here. It says, yes, I've failed, but I've also grown. Faith doesn't deny the wounds. It declares that the wounds are not the end. This isn't just spiritual optimism. It's a fundamental psychological truth. Human beings assign meaning to everything they experience. Two people can go through the same hardship, and one will emerge bitter while the other becomes better. Why? Not because the circumstances were different, but because the interpretation was different. Faith gives you the tools to reinterpret what life has handed you. The mind is a powerful place. It can be a sanctuary or a battlefield. And what you allow to live in it, what you allow to grow, will shape the trajectory of your life. If you constantly relive the story of defeat, shame, or lack, your mind becomes a museum of limitations. But if you allow faith to narrate your story, your mind becomes a place of possibility, strength, and redemption. Think of it this way. Your past may explain you, but it does not define you. Your past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. And faith is what moves you forward. It steps in and rewrites the script. It replaces "I'm broken" with "I'm being restored." It turns "I was rejected" into "I was redirected." That shift in language becomes a shift in reality, because when your inner story changes, your external life starts to follow. The most successful people I've known emotionally, spiritually, and even materially are not those who have had perfect lives. They're those who have learned how to reframe their pain. They took the fire that burned them and used it to forge something new. They didn't let the past define them. They let it refine them. And that's the difference. Faith refines. It clarifies. It takes what the enemy meant for harm and turns it into fuel for purpose. I once heard a story of a man who said, "My father was an alcoholic. That's why I became one." And his brother said, "My father was an alcoholic. That's why I didn't become one." The same father, the same history, but two completely different futures based on two different interpretations. This is what faith does. It gives you the authority to choose how the story continues. It hands the pen back to you. And with God's help, you become the author of a redemptive narrative, no longer bound by the wounds of yesterday. It's important to realize that faith isn't magic. It doesn't snap its fingers and erase the past. What it does is bring healing through it. It makes peace with what was, so you can live fully in what is and move boldly into what's next. That peace is powerful. It brings closure, not because you forget what happened, but because you no longer let it steal your future. You don't need to wait for everything to be perfect before you change your story. That's the beauty of faith. It starts wherever you are. Even in your lowest moment, faith speaks life. It whispers, "This is not the end." It challenges the narrative of defeat and replaces it with one of growth, resilience, and divine potential. And over time, that new narrative becomes your truth, not because you forced it, but because you believed it. So take inventory of your internal story. What chapters are you still reading in shame? What memories have you marked as failures that could actually be reframed as foundation? What painful ending have you accepted that God might be rewriting as a beginning? The answers to those questions won't be found in regret. They'll be found in belief, in the decision to trust that your past is not a prophecy, it's a stepping stone. And that's the essence of faith, the power to look at the broken pieces and see not destruction, but potential. The power to look at your reflection and say, "I am not who I was, I am who I am becoming." That's not denial. That's transformation, and it's available to every person, no matter what you've been through. You are not the mistakes you've made. You are not the failure you experienced. You are not the loss you endured. You are the story still being written, and faith is the ink. So let today be the moment you take the pen in your hand, open a new page, and declare, "My past may have shaped me, but it will not stop me. My future starts now." One of the greatest misconceptions people carry is the belief that faith is passive, that it's a quiet, internal sentiment reserved for moments of prayer or stillness. But real faith, transformative faith, is anything but passive. It's bold, it's assertive, it demands movement. Because faith, when truly alive within you, doesn't just sit and wait. It calls you to make courageous decisions. It activates your ability to step forward even when clarity is absent and certainty is scarce. It urges you to act when everything logical in you wants to hesitate. And in that action, in that bold decision born from belief, the seeds of your future are planted. You don't need to have all the answers to move forward. You need trust, and that trust becomes the courage to begin. When you begin anything worthwhile in life, a career, a relationship, a healing journey, it's rarely under perfect conditions. It's almost always amidst fear, ambiguity, or some level of personal doubt. And yet, those who move forward anyway, guided not by fear but by faith, are the ones who create new realities for themselves. Faith isn't waiting for permission, it's acting on conviction. It's not the absence of fear, it's the presence of a deeper confidence. It's what allows someone to look at a mountain and say, "I may not know how, but I know it can be moved." That kind of thinking doesn't arise from human reasoning alone. It comes from a cultivated mindset of trust, a mindset formed over time through reflection, spiritual connection, and small acts of obedience to a bigger vision. Courage and faith are sisters. They walk together. One encourages you to dream, the other dares you to move. If you have faith but you don't act, your belief stays dormant, like a seed buried in dry soil. But the moment you choose to step into something uncertain, you activate the very power that faith promises. You invite opportunity, you signal to life and to God that you're ready for more, and that readiness creates alignment. Doors open that you didn't know were there. Philosophically, this principle is rooted in how humans engage with change. We are biologically inclined to seek safety, to remain in patterns we know even if those patterns limit us. The brain wants predictability, but the spirit craves growth. Faith is what bridges the two. It's what gives your spirit the upper hand. It says, "Yes, I'm aware of the risk, but I'm more aware of the reward." And that risk becomes less frightening when you remember that God doesn't lead you into uncertainty to punish you. He leads you there to develop you. There's a reason why the most impactful figures in history, spiritual leaders, innovators, pioneers, were often the ones who moved without a guarantee. They chose to build, to create, to speak, to stand, when the world offered them no assurance of success. What they had was inner certainty, not external proof. And that inner certainty, born from deep faith, changed the course of their lives. You don't need a dramatic calling or a burning bush moment to act with faith. Often, it's the small, daily choices that make the biggest impact. Choosing to show up, choosing to try again, choosing to forgive, choosing to say yes to something new. These are decisions born from faith, not from ease, but from purpose, and each one builds momentum. Each one tells your subconscious mind, your emotions, and your environment, I am moving forward. It's easy to say we believe something. It's harder to build a life around it. But when you do, when you let your faith shape your decisions, you begin to see a shift. You start walking into rooms differently. You start attracting people who align with your vision. You begin to let go of what no longer serves your future. And all of it began with a simple decision to move. When you allow faith to guide your choices, you become resilient because you're no longer operating from shallow emotion. You're operating from spiritual conviction. That means when things get hard, you don't collapse. You remember why you started, and that why is stronger than any temporary setback. This isn't to say the road is easy. On the contrary, it will stretch you. It will test your patience. But it will also build you. You will find yourself doing things you once thought impossible, not because you suddenly became someone else, but because you finally started living like the person you were always meant to be. Faith doesn't add something new to you. It reveals what was already there, waiting to be unlocked. There will be moments when you doubt the path. That's normal. Doubt is part of the process. But don't confuse the presence of doubt with the absence of faith. Faith is choosing to move even with doubt in the passenger seat. It's keeping your eyes on the vision, not the noise. It's remembering that nothing changes unless you do, and change begins the moment you act. So if you're standing at the edge of a decision today, wondering whether you should take the leap, start the project, mend the relationship, forgive yourself, or begin again, ask yourself this, what would I do right now if I truly believed God was with me? And then do it, not perfectly, not fearlessly, but faithfully, because action inspired by faith doesn't just change your situation. It changes you. And in doing so, it creates a future far greater than the one fear would have settled for. Most people walk through life carrying invisible chains, beliefs they never questioned, voices from the past, memories of failure, and assumptions about what they can or cannot become. These chains don't rattle, but they restrict. They don't scream, but they whisper doubt, and over time, those whispers become truths we live by. That's the tragedy of limiting beliefs. They feel like facts when they're really just rehearsed fears. But faith, living faith, has the power to break those chains, not by force, but by replacing old beliefs with new vision. Faith says you are not who you were, and you are not trapped in who you've become. You are capable of more because God placed more within you. Limiting beliefs are often born in moments of pain or failure, a harsh word from a parent, a dream that didn't come true, a voice that said, "You're not enough." And because we're human, we accepted those messages as identity. We internalized them. We began to shape our decisions, our relationships, and our ambitions around them. That's why you see people with enormous potential settling for lives that feel small. It's not because they're not smart or talented. It's because somewhere deep inside, they believed the lie that they weren't worthy of more. Faith interrupts that inner dialogue. It doesn't argue with the past. It overrides it. It offers a new thought, a new belief, and says, "Let's start again." And the moment you begin to think differently, you begin to live differently, because every action begins with a belief. If you believe you'll fail, you won't try. If you believe you're too broken, you'll avoid connection. If you believe success is for others, you'll sabotage your own progress. But if you believe that God made you with purpose, that you're not defined by the worst thing you've done, that there is something sacred about your existence, everything changes. There's a psychological principle at play here called cognitive restructuring *. It's the process of identifying distorted thoughts and replacing them with truth. Faith does that at a spiritual level. It takes the distorted story you've told yourself and aligns it with God's vision for your life. It transforms "I'm too late" into "I'm right on time." It transforms "I'll always be this way" into "I'm being made new." And the beauty of faith is that it works before the evidence appears. You don't need to wait for a breakthrough to believe. You believe, and then the breakthrough begins. There's a well-known phrase, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." That means your belief system is not just a mental concept, it's a creative force. What you believe at the deepest level becomes the pattern your life follows. That's why we must be intentional about what we allow into our minds. You can't build a life of purpose on a foundation of self-doubt. You can't reach for your calling if your thoughts are anchored in fear. Faith is not just about believing in God. It's also about believing what God says about you. Sometimes we don't even realize we're carrying limiting beliefs. They hide behind sarcasm, procrastination, perfectionism, or the need to control everything. But underneath those behaviors are thoughts like, "I'll never be good enough," or "If I fail, I'll be rejected." Faith shines a light on those hidden thoughts. It asks you to examine them, to question whether they come from truth or from fear. And when you begin to unearth those lies, you create space for something better: peace, courage, clarity. Now, breaking free from limiting beliefs isn't a one-time event. It's a daily process. Every day, you will hear voices, internal or external, that try to pull you back into the old mindset. But that's where your spiritual discipline matters. That's where you must speak to yourself the way God would speak to you. With compassion, with boldness, with vision, tell yourself, "I am not my failure. I am not my fear. I am not my past." Speak life over yourself, even when it feels unnatural. Because repetition builds belief, and belief builds your future. Faith doesn't just give you permission to change. It gives you the power to change. It doesn't just say you can. It says you must. Because there is more inside you than you've been living. There are talents you haven't used, words you haven't spoken, dreams you haven't pursued, and none of that is lost. It's just been waiting for your belief to catch up with your potential. You are not here by accident, and the thoughts that have limited you up until now don't have to shape your tomorrow. You can let go of the narrative that kept you small. You can choose a different story, one rooted in truth, one led by faith, and that choice will set you on a new course, not just mentally, but spiritually, relationally, and even professionally. So let today be the day you stop living under the weight of what someone else said about you, or what you once believed about yourself. Let faith rise in you like a fire that burns through every lie that ever tried to keep you down. Let faith become the voice that drowns out doubt. And when you hear that still small voice within say, you were made for more, don't just agree, asterisk, asterisk, believe it, asterisk, asterisk. Because the moment you do, the chains that held you quietly for years will begin to break. And in their place, you'll find the freedom to build a future worthy of who you truly are.